This is Tommy's Outdoors 112, and this is the last episode of the podcast this year, 2021. It's been a long year, but don't worry, there are going to be more episodes next year, especially that this is the first episode in a series where I intend to bring closer to you, my viewers and listeners, a subject of bow hunting. Bow hunting is quite popular across the pond in the US. And as far as I know, this is the fastest and most growing segment of hunting. But in Europe and especially in the UK and Ireland, it is not that popular. Probably one of the good reasons why it's not popular is because it's illegal. And to be honest, when I was starting in hunting, I wanted bow hunt. It was very natural to me, very natural transition from fishing. Like a bow is very similar to fishing rod. But unfortunately, it's illegal. And I think it's illegal on animal welfare grounds, which my personal opinion doesn't make any sense at all. And I know, you probably disagree, but that's fine. But in any case, this is the first episode where my guest, a passionate bow hunter, Paul Rhoades. Paul is also founder of Sizzling Arrows Outdoors. It's a community portal dedicated to organic food and healthy eating. And like I mentioned earlier, Paul is a passionate bow hunter, so we talk about bow hunting. And since I think about this episode as kind of like an introductory to bow hunting, we spent considerable time talking about gear, bows, arrows, how all these things work. Because this is, again, during my conversation about bow hunting, I noticed that a lot of people don't really realize where bow hunting stands right now, gear-wise. But we also discussed the very important and heated subject of whether bow hunting is humane and whether the kill obtained through arrowing an animal is a humane kill, and what are the wounding rates, and whether it's difficult, and whether that greater difficulty over rifle hunting translates to better training of hunters and all these things. So I am sure that you will learn a lot from this episode, and I'm sure that you will enjoy listening to my conversation with Paul as much as we enjoyed having that conversation. And as you can see, those who watching this video, I'm wearing Tommy's Outdoors t-shirt. Those Tommy's Outdoors t-shirts are available in buymeacoffee.com/Tommy's Outdoors. Go to extras section and pick the size, and you can buy one of those t-shirts. And if you don't want a t-shirt, but you still want to support me and my podcast, you can then simply buy me a coffee on buymeacoffee.com/Tommy's Outdoors, link in the description of the show. And that's it, folks. I wish you a Merry Christmas or, happy holiday season, whatever is your preferred way. And I also, I wish you a Happy New Year, because there's going to be no episode of the podcast between Christmas and the New Year. The new episode is coming shortly after the New Year. So yeah, that's it from me in 2021. Folks, enjoy it. And now, Sizzling Arrows with Paul Rhoades. Paul, welcome to Tommy's Outdoors. Good to have you on the show.
Hey, Tommy. Thank you for having me, man. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's like always, I feel a little bit special to have someone from across the Atlantic. I was just thinking like almost all my guests from the US of A are hunters. Even if they're scientists, it turns out they're also hunters. I think
Yeah.
there's like this like it's in my head is like the hunting is a big thing in the US, and we're gonna talk about it in a second. But speaking about hunting, you just back from your Michigan hunt. How it went?
Yeah, no, I spent 5 days over in Michigan. It started off rocky. Generally, with any trip, if you start off rocky, it ends up doing pretty good there towards the end of it, and that's exactly what happened with this trip. Like I was supposed to fly out of Raleigh at 5:55. I woke up at 5:30 by accident, so I missed my flight.
Oh God.
Yeah, so I like uh, hauled butt over to the airport, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to make it. So I called the airline and explained the situation, and they're like, well, we can get you on a flight at 7:30 tonight. It'll put you there about midnight. I was like, you know what? I can drive there quicker than that. So I just packed up everything. I got a refund for the ticket.
Oh wow.
And drove. Yeah, I was impressed. So Delta did a good job. I will give them that. But yeah, I drove the 11 and a half hours up to Michigan and got there about 6:30, 6:45, just in time for dinner. And we started hunting that next morning. Seen a couple deer that morning. It started snowing while I was sitting in the tree stand, and I was hunting with my bow at that point. Yeah. Oh, and funny thing, I kind of skipped over this. My buddy that invited me over, he called me on my way there because he went out hunting that evening, and he's like, "You wouldn't believe it. I just smoked a 8-point with the crossbow." And apparently, he was sitting on the ground, and this thing came in to him about 11 yards, and he plucked it right there. So he's like, yeah, I see what you could have got if you wouldn't have missed your flight. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm sure I'm going to be hearing about missing my flight quite regularly while I'm here. But yeah, so when I first got in the stand, it was cold. I mean, Michigan's cold, but it started snowing. So I'm sitting in the stand, open stand, getting snowed on, freezing my butt off, and seen a couple does, few squirrels, nothing crazy. And we went out that evening, seen some does, nothing crazy, and a few small bucks. And the next morning, we went and sat in a new stand that they had put up, and seen a decent amount of activity. We probably seen 13, 14 deer, and nothing, shooter wise. We did, and I don't like saying this, but we did try to shoot 2 does, and for some reason, both of us missed. Clean miss. And I don't know what happened. Like, I mean, I can say is I'm not used to the gun, but that's still not an excuse to miss a deer at 78 yards. So I don't know what happened. So we ended up, shooting at those deer, and we went out and looked around, couldn't find any sign of blood, and with the guns we were using, that they should just fold up. And we decided to go sit back in the blind that morning and just wait and see. And it's probably 9:30. My buddy looks over, and he's like, "Holy crap! There's a big deer over there." And I was like, "Really?" And I put my binoculars up, and all I see is this little bitty dinky thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, "Did you have something in your coffee this morning?" I was like, "That's not a big deer. This is a little bitty thing." And he's like, "No, I'm serious. It's a big one." Sure, okay, go, whatever you say, Sean. And we're sitting there, and I see another nose poke out, and it was a doe. And then all of a sudden, the one that I ended up getting a crack at popped out, and I mean, he's got good sized horns on him, good mature deer, 8-point. And I was like, okay, now I see what you're talking about. You're not crazy. So we started running what we call doe bleats and grunt calls. And we kind of mixed up a bunch of different calls there, and we ended up getting the doe to come in. So he followed this doe. It was just like on a rope. That girl was pulling him in, and I ended up clocking him at 30 yards. I could have shot him with the bow all day long, but I was shooting a 350 Legend, which is a decent caliber. First time I've ever shot that. But yeah, he went 40 yards and piled up. Perfect lung shot, and the heart didn't get touched at all. So I've got that in the cooler. Yeah, so we'll play around with that a little bit, and Ended up smoking a doe the last night I was there. So, brought 2 deer home, 2 full coolers full of meat, and had a great time. Enjoyed hanging out with my buddy up there and just seeing what Michigan's all about. So it may become an annual thing. And the thing that they do up there that is really cool, and I was like, I could get used to this kind of hunting. We're sitting in box blinds. They're fully covered. They've got propane heaters running in there, so you're not cold. And the thing I was teasing my friend, I was like, he's in there smoking cigarettes, and I was like, why are you smoking a cigarette? We're hunting, and didn't matter. They still come in 30 yards, upwind, downwind, doesn't matter. And I was like, I can't believe I do so much on my scent control, and you're in here smoking a cigarette, and we're killing stuff. That's ridiculous. But yeah, all in all, it was a good trip, and I got home last night not last night, but Thursday morning around 1:30 in the morning. So.
Right, congratulations! The people on Instagram can see your deer, and talking about Instagram and all the other stuff. Maybe for the benefit of our listeners, you tell us a little bit about yourself, because you're a hunter since you could walk. You started very early, so give us a little bit of a background. How you started.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. So when I was growing up, I grew up on a ranch in Wyoming, a very small town in Wyoming. We had 120 people when I was growing up, and that was our town, and that's probably including cats and dogs too. So I mean, yeah, very small. Everybody knew everybody's business. There was no privacy in this town whatsoever. We had no gas stations until the year 2000. I think was our first gas station that went in.
Oh my God! Seriously?
Yeah. So we had to drive 40 minutes to get gas. So you had to really make sure you plan. Same with groceries. We had no grocery stores, no street lights, no nothing. So real country town. We had a school. I went to school. My graduating class was 5 kids, and I pretty much went to school from kindergarten all the way up to graduation with the same kids. So it was pretty much we're all family there. We fought like family and everything. But yeah, I started hunting when I was old enough to hold a rifle. Really, shot my first prairie dog, varmint control at 5 years old. Shot my first deer. I want to say it was 7 years old. It might have been a little bit later than that, but yeah, I mean, I was born and raised pretty much with the gun in my hands, and I've had a love for it ever since I pulled the trigger the first time. And I really didn't start associating it with food until I started working in restaurants. So once I decided I wanted to follow a career in culinary and become a chef, is when I kind of made the connection with, okay, the meat that we're producing from these animals that we're hunting in the wild is extremely clean. It's tasty. It's not filled with a bunch of like hormones and all that junk. And it's better for you because it doesn't have all the cholesterol that beef and some of these other animals do. So I was like, throughout all these years, we were eating cows because we raise cattle, and we were donating the wild game that we harvest. And once I made that connection and realization that we're giving away all this precious meat to other people that we don't even know, why are we not keeping it for ourselves? So everything that I get, I make sure that I fill up my freezer. And then, if there's anything extra, if I have friends that are like, hey, can I have some venison, or are you going to have an extra deer this year? Then I'll go out and purposely get one just for them and just donate it to them. They take care of the processing and all that. But yeah, so I mean, I've been hunting for years. Started my culinary journey. I was a chef professionally for about 10 to 11 years. And then I switched into finance field after my first kid was born, my son, because just the hours in restaurant are not family friendly whatsoever.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But yeah, so now we're taking the culinary and the hunting and fishing and outdoors and mashing them together as they should be and teaching people how to do that.
Yeah, lovely. And speaking about that, you have a podcast as well, Sizzling Arrow Outdoors. Tell us about the podcast, how the idea came about.
Yeah, so the idea of the podcast came about after I decided to start up the company, Sizzlin Arrow Outdoors, and I figured there's really no better way to get the word out there than to actually put it onto a bunch of different platforms and actually talk about the things that are important to me personally, but also would benefit other individuals as well. And we have interviews every month on the podcast with different hunters, farmers, and chefs. So we get a perspective of each one of these professions. So the thing that I looked at is that hunters and farmers, they kind of need each other in a certain way, whether it's managing the herds of the animals or bringing in extra income for the farmers, for leases and stuff like that to help, succumb some of the costs that they endure every year. And then chefs can kind of connect with both of them. Chefs depend on farmers more so than the chefs would depend on hunters, but it's just kind of a circle. So we all kind of connect with each other in this circle, and wanted to make something that kind of brings all three of them together. And again, with the podcast, this is the best way to reach out to as many people as I can through different platforms.
Yeah. So obviously everybody who is listening or watching this, Sizzling Arrow Outdoors, any and all podcast platforms, right?
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure we're on pretty much everything. We're on the major ones, Pandora, Spotify, iHeart Apple Podcasts, and there's other ones out there
There's
too.
always
So
this thing with podcasts, right? As you're on these main ones, and there's like a 25,000 other small ones, and like, am I even there?
yeah. No, there are so many of them, but yeah, if you just Google Sizzling Arrow, and we pop up, and you can listen to it anywhere there. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Listen, so that explains the connection with food, and how this is connected, hunting and food, and this theme on your podcast. So this thing aside, now I really would like to talk to you about bow hunting, because you are a bow hunter, and obviously the majority of my listeners and viewers are in Europe, especially Ireland, UK, English speaking people from other parts of Europe as well. And as we know, bow hunting is not popular in Europe at all. It's illegal in most of the countries. So I think that it's only fair to start with you laying out to us a state of play when it comes to bow hunting, because I think that a lot of people, when someone says bow hunting, many people kind of don't really imagine how it's going to look like. Are they have like a big longbow? Are they using recurve bows? Like what? So if you could lay out, how state of play of bow hunting, how it looks right now in the US. What are the types or types of bows and types of everything that people should know as an introduction to bow hunting.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. So with bow hunting, especially here in the United States, it's very, very popular. Honestly, it's becoming more so than rifle, at least in my opinion, I think, because one thing, a lot of people, especially in the area that I'm at, rifles are kind of frowned upon just because people aren't familiar with them. They think that, and I mean, for good reason, they're a little nervous because it's so populated out here. So rifle can reach a lot farther than a bow can. So getting permission to bow hunt out here is a lot easier than getting permission to rifle hunt. So if you're a bow hunter and a rifle hunter and you both go to the same farm and say, "Hey, I would love to hunt your ranch or your farm, and I'm going to be doing a bow," and the other guy says, "I'm going to be hunting with a rifle," 75 to 80% of the time they're going to take the bow hunter over the rifle hunter.
Oh, that's interesting. That's very
Yeah,
interesting.
and it's one thing because it's quieter. It's not as it doesn't reach out as far as a rifle would. There's no chance of really a ricochet. Now, yeah, I've seen arrows come down, hit the ground, and pop up, but I mean, if you have 500 yards or so for it to do that. It's not going to, it's going to come up and then come down. It's not going to ricochet and kind of shoot off and possibly blow through some little brush or whatnot. If you hit a brush with an arrow, it's going to deflect off and then probably hit some more brush and slow down. So it is a little bit safer when you're in populated areas, especially if you're shooting down from a tree, because more times than not, it's going to just stick right into the ground. There are a couple different types of bows out there. I hunt with a compound bow. I shoot a Matthews VXR 31.5. So what that is the Matthews is the brand, VXR is the model, and 31.5 is how tall, like how long it is from axle to axle. So you have your cams, which are the strings wrapped around the cam, and all your power is in that cam. So I've got two cams, one on top, one on bottom. And when you pull it back, they come around and get you that tension on the string. And then when you release, they release as well. And that's where you get all your momentum from.
Would it be fair to say that the compound bows are the most popular type of bow?
Yes. Yeah, I would bank on that. The compound bows are probably the most popular bows out there. Recurves come in second. Crossbows are, well, I don't want to say recurves come in second because I'm not 100% sure. And these are just kind of guesstimates on my part. So I don't quote me on the numbers. But from my opinion, I think compounds would be the most popular. Second runner up would be crossbows, which those are starting to become a lot more popular than they used to be, just because regulations and stuff out here are changing. They're actually letting crossbows be used during archery season and consider them kind of a bow anyway. And for your listeners, if they're not familiar with what a crossbow is set up similar to what a gun is. You have a bolt, which are generally shorter. My arrows run 28.5 inches. Crossbow bolts will probably be about, I'd say, 16 to 18 inches maybe. They might be a little longer. They might be about 22, 23 inches. I don't shoot crossbows. I'm just guesstimating here, but they're quite a bit shorter and fatter. But you pre-cock the crossbow. The limbs come vertically, and you've got kind of a rifle gun stock set up with a trigger, just like a rifle. So once you cock that back and you load your bolt, all you have to do is get up, get your scope, put on where you want to hit, and pull the trigger. So it's kind of a mix between a bow and a rifle.
Is that the still a thing that the hardcore bow hunters kind of looking down on the crossbow folks? They what are you doing?
Oh yeah, you can find forums online about that going back and forth.
Okay, so it's a big thing.
It's a big thing. And yeah, I can see both sides. I mean, it's great for individuals that have shoulder injuries and still want to bow hunt that can't pull back a bow. I get it for that. But for me personally, if I'm able to shoot a compound bow, I'm not going to shoot a crossbow. It takes some of the challenge out. If I'm going to shoot something that looks and kind of feels like a gun, I'm going to shoot a gun.
Yeah. Is the range larger with a crossbow? Can you reach further? Your target can be further away.
Yeah, I mean, you should. I mean, you probably reach out maybe 100 yards with a crossbow if you have a good one.
Oh, okay.
Generally, I would say, I probably wouldn't reach out more than 50 to 60 yards with those things. But yeah, they do have a little more terminal velocity with them, and a little more power. Like some of them are pulling 200. I think it's maybe 165 pounds. They're up into the 150 pounds. So you're pulling a lot of poundage versus mine, which is a 60-pound pull.
Yeah, I was gonna say that on the compound bow, probably 80, 90 pounds is max. It's top.
Yeah, 80 pounds. I've only heard a 190-pound bow. I've never seen one or pulled one back. You can get 60 and 70 are about the most popular. 70 probably being more so than the 60. The nice thing about my bow is I've got a couple little pieces on the cam that I can change out. I just unscrew and change it, and I can make it from a 60 to a 70 pound. Okay. So just with changing a little. Yeah, exactly. Now, the bow that I'm shooting, it will reach out and poke something at 100 yards. Not that I would recommend shooting an animal at 100 yards with it, but if you're shooting, targets and whatnot, you can pretty much get that thing where you want it to hit at 100 yards if you practice with it.
I think that's the part. That's the part why bow hunters look down on crossbow folk, because it's easier. I would imagine you can rest crossbow like you rest a rifle, and
Yeah.
then you have a scope, so you can be more precise in your aim. That
Hmm.
while on a bow, handheld bow, you just basically need to hold everything in your hand, so it must be more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing, with the way that us hardcore bow hunters, and I can't say a whole lot because my friend shoots a crossbow, so I got to be careful what I say.
Don't tell him
Um,
about this
yeah,
podcast.
yeah, exactly. But with that, I think we look at it as you can hunt in the archery season, the season that we hold kind of deer because nobody's out there blasting away. Deer are a little calmer. We have the opportunity to get up close and personal with these animals and chase them before they start going scared and running all over the place. Now we've got the crossbow hunters able to come in and have something to where they don't have to get ready. They don't have to pull it back when the deer's right below them or within 15, 20 yards. Because with compound or recurve, when the deer comes in, you have to get that bow and pull it back. And you have to make all this movement without them seeing you. That's part of the challenge. And then once they get in, like if they stop, you have to hold this poundage, which once it's full drawback, because you pull full poundage and then it drops off. It's called the let off. It drops off to like either 75 or 80% of the full draw. So you're holding probably 12 to 4, like I would say probably 12 pounds roughly on mine. So, but if you're sitting here in this position where you have your shoulder up and you're holding this bow back, you can only hold 12 pounds for so long before you start getting shaky and your accuracy goes down. And if the deer doesn't move, because deer's going to do what it wants to do. So if he doesn't move where you can get a shot, you're going to have to let that bow down. You're going to have to let it down quietly, and you're going to have to do that motion all over again when he gives you a shot. So there's a lot of possibilities of being seen with bow hunting. With crossbows, they come in, you're already cocked, you're ready to go. All you got to do is lift it, put the crosshairs, pull the trigger. So it kind of, in my opinion, defeats the challenge of archery hunting. And that's one thing that us bow hunters love and hate. It's it's one of those things that it's kind of a love-hate relationship, because you can feel so much reward from knocking an animal down with a bow, but you can also feel so much frustration when you can't get the shot, or if they come in too far away, or you just can't get them to stop. I mean, I had that experience this year on a nice 8-point here in North Carolina. He came in 33 yards, which is in my wheelhouse, but I couldn't get him to stop.
Hmm.
I whistled at him, I grunted at him, I did everything I could, and I was on full draw on him. I couldn't get him to stop.
Huh.
So I just had to watch him go by.
Yeah, frustrating.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Oh man, listen, and tell me then the recurve bows and the long bows, are they like reserved for the, just a limited tribe of weirdos, or people who like super challenging situation, or are they what I'm aiming at, like, is the kind of like a, in air quotes culture around the recurve bow and longbow as a, like an elite, or is it like, well, you maybe you start with this and then you graduate towards a compound bow, or is it the opposite? You start with compound bow and then you're looking for more challenge and you go, into the older, more primitive gear.
Yeah. So I mean, with recurves and longbows, I've got such respect for the gentlemen that do that. I mean, it's a whole different animal doing those. You're shooting instinctive, which is you're not shooting with sights. So you have to practice with that so much to where it just becomes second nature for you. And I started off shooting recurve when I was young. That was the first bow that I've shot with and first bow that I hunted with. I did shoot one antelope with the recurve. But it requires, especially now, with as busy as I am with family and everything, I just don't have the time to sit and practice with that over and over and get as good as I need to be with a recurve to feel comfortable hunting. an animal with it now. So to answer your question, if you graduate to the compound, no. You start off with the recurve, and then you find out if you got the time or if you're any good with the recurve, and then you decide if you want to go to the compound. I compounds challenging, but you still have your sights. You can get them pinned in as long as you can put that pin where you want to hit and make that arrow go where you want to go. You're good. Recurve, again, you're instinctive shooting. I love shooting a recurve. I'm actually going to probably purchase one this year to maybe do some bow fishing, because they're great for bow fishing because you got a little bit less poundage. You can with recurves, you don't hold, because with recurves you're pulling full weight. So if you have a 45-pound bow, you're pulling that 45 pounds the whole time.
Right.
So pretty much there, once you get a shot, you pull it back and then you look for a second, then let it go. You don't sit there and hold it because you're holding so much weight. Longbows are the same. They're a little bit trickier than recurves are.
Why?
Just the setup of them. They're a lot longer. That's why they call them longbows. And so you have the longbow, and then you have the recurve, and then you have the compounds that drop down into more compact packages.
Yeah.
But
And I presume that also the distance that you can shoot with the recurves or longbows it's much shorter than.
Yeah, for an effective kill range, it definitely is. You got to get closer, I would say. And there may be some recurve shooters out there that say I'm full of what, but I would say probably 30 to 50 yards at the max with the recurve bow. I mean, yeah, you can put an arrow out there farther than that with one of those, but you're going to have to hold real high and lead that thing. But if it's effective kill range, I honestly, I probably wouldn't even go past 30.
Right. Okay, so I think it's fair to assume that compound bows are where it's at. This is the most popular type of bow for bow hunting. So let's focus on this gear right now. Now, tell us, how does the projectile, the arrow, looks like? Because then again, this is from my limited knowledge, this is far from simple, right? Like, oh, it's an arrow. Yeah. There is the whole catalog of different shafts and the I don't know how you call feathers or how you call the thing that is on the end, and then whole spectrum of different broadheads. And I even know about the guys who are collecting broadheads, and they see the broadhead and it's like, oh, this is like 1974 old broadhead. So can you just bring these flavors how these things work?
Yeah, no, for sure. So the arrows for compounds, there are a couple different types of arrows. You have aluminum arrow, which they tend to bend. They're not as strong as the other arrow, which is a carbon arrow. And actually, there's three. So there's the aluminum arrow, you have the carbon arrow, and then the hybrid that I'm shooting is a carbon shaft wrapped with aluminum casing. So you get kind of the best of both worlds with that one. It's very small diameter. It's a 5 millimeter diameter on these things. So you can get them up to, I think, 6 or 7 millimeter. I know you can get them at 6, then I think there's maybe 8, but those are getting pretty fat. Those are probably more so target shooting when you get into the fatter arrows. But for hunting, I found that the 5 millimeter works. I think the 4 millimeter is too small. In my opinion, it's just really, really skinny. They're fast. Don't get me wrong. I mean, those things are real fast. But with these, I think they're waiting. Okay, so I'm going to start with the shaft. So you got your carbon shafts, your aluminum shafts, or your hybrid shafts. Those are cut to kind of your draw length, because you have, everyone's got a different draw length. Mine is 28.5 inches. And the way they do that, they've got, at the archery shops, they've got an arrow that you can put on your string and you pull back, and it's got numbers. And once you get full draw, it'll tell you what your draw length is, and that's where they set the bow to. Another way, if you don't have one of those, you don't have an archery shop and you've got an adjustable compound, you can have someone measure your arm spread and then pretty much cut that in half, and that'll be pretty close. It's not going to be exact, but it'll be close. But anyway, so you've got the shaft to cut your draw length. On the end, the projectile end that goes towards the animal.
Sorry, just one thing about the shaft. So the thinner the shaft is, the faster the arrow is. Is that correct?
Yeah,
And then you need
yeah,
to find
yeah.
this, but I presume it's also more brittle or bends more. So that is a drawback, right? So what's a
I mean,
what's a
and
trade off between having too thin of the shaft?
so if you have too thin of a shaft, one, like you said, it's going to be a little more brittle. Most of the arrows are very, very strong, no matter how thin they are. Some of the sacrifice you're going to get from that would be you have increased speed, which is good, but you're going to have less momentum once it gets there. It's going to have less of a pass through, I guess you would, because your arrow is going to be lighter because you have less arrow. So I've found that these skinny arrows are hard to get out of targets because the field point that you practice with, or your practice point, kind of comes out of the end a little bit. So trying to pull it out of a target can be tough. But I don't have a lot of experience with the real small ones because I just don't shoot them.
Yeah, sure.
But I've seen, of course, if you get the fatter ones, the wind drift is going to be a little bit more. They're going to be a little slower because they're heavier. But you'll have a little bit better
So pretty much like with
penetration.
with the bullet choice, you just need to know what you
Mm,
do when, and what are the conditions, and then probably what suits your style best. And
yeah, yeah,
this is okay. Sorry, so I was just want to clarify that from about the shaft. So now we
yeah,
onto
yeah.
the projectile points.
Yeah, yeah. So the projectile, or if you want to call it field point or broadhead, depending on which one you're using, your field point is practice tips. They're kind of pointy little smooth ends that you can put on the end of the arrow. They can run from 85 grains to 100 grains to 125 grain, depending on what you're wanting your broadhead to be. So I do in the middle. I shoot 100 grain tip, so all my field points are 100 grains. Broadheads, what they are, you've got two types of broadheads. You've got the expandable broadhead, which is a mechanical. So practically, you either have a rubber band holding the blades to the tip,
Oh,
so they kind of fold in and they get held by a rubber band, or you have the locking mechanism. I can't remember what the technical term for it is, but there's ones that require no rubber band, and those are the ones that I use, and they just kind of clip into place. So once they hit the animal, these blades will push out and they'll come out, and then they end up making like a 1.25 to 2 inch cut, depending on which one you have.
mm-hmm.
And you have 3 razor blades on the end of this tip. So, and they're razor sharp, scary
So
sharp.
I guess the idea is to have a lot of cutting surface once you hit the animal, to have like more bleeding and so on. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, while the arrow travels through the air, it's more aerodynamic. That's the
Yes.
that's the idea. Okay, so these are
Yep. Yep.
expandable
Yep.
broadheads.
Yeah. So the expandables shoot pretty much the same as your field points do. So there's going to be less tuning required to the bow, less fiddling with it, because they're going to shoot pretty much the same as what you're practicing with, which that is a huge plus. That's one reason why I like them so well. Some disadvantages before we get into the fixed blades. The disadvantages to the mechanicals, they are prone to failure at some point. Sometimes they don't open.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they will deflect off a rib if you're doing a quartering shot. So you have to kind of practice these different angles and practice with these heads a little bit before you go out, so you know what you're like, what is possible for that broadhead. Like, there are certain broadheads that I won't use because they do not do quarter shots. Unfortunately, I learned that one in the field the hard way. So yeah, it's just kind of a lesson learned not to use those heads anymore. So I switched over to they're called Grim Reaper, and I also use one that's called a Nap Spitfire, which both of those are pretty good on quartering shots. I don't do steep quarters, just to where they're kind of turned a little bit. I usually try to wait for them to get broadside before I make a shot. But I haven't had any failures with those. Knock on wood. Hopefully, this isn't the season for that to happen. But yeah, the broadheads, fixed blades shoot real well, and they've had, if you get the right one, they perform well too. Now fixed blades, they are just like it's said in the name, they are fixed. You don't have mechanical mechanisms to them. They're just the razor blades that are kind of machined into the head. Practically, there's little slits that you can put these razor blades into. They're like if you're replacing a box cutter blade, it's kind of like that, but they're made a specific way for this head to look like an arrowhead. Those require more tuning. You have to fiddle with your bow a little bit more to make sure that they fly straight. Arrow dynamics, once you get them sighted in, if you would, they fly really straight. But you got to make sure that you tune it in the way that it works with your arrow.
Oh, gotcha.
So that does require some time.
So the characteristics is different than your training points because of the blade. Okay, so that means that you also need to kind of train or try at least these broadheads, on the target.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's definitely, I mean, no matter what broadhead you're shooting, you should definitely shoot at least one out of the pack into a target just to make sure that it's flying straight and make sure that your arrows like them the way they are. Now, again, with the fixed blades, you're going to have to shoot a couple different ones just to make sure that they're flying right, and then you're going to have to adjust your sight to accommodate for that.
Okay. Is there also any science and complication to the end part of the arrow? To the how do you call that, feathers, or how do you call these?
Okay, yeah. So the vanes. With recurve bows, you can use the vanes. You can use feathers for the vanes. Some people do use those, especially the real traditional guys that make their own arrows out of wood. But for compounds, we have vanes. So we have 2.5 inch, 3 inch, and I think there's 4 inch vanes. I use the little blazer vanes. They're about, I want to say, 2 3/4 inch vanes on mine. But I found that they work pretty well. The 2 inch ones stick out a little too far, so they kind of bounce off my cable on my bow, which throws my shot off. So these little bit longer ones are a little bit thinner when they come around. So they're kind of a tear. I don't want to say teardrop, like half of a teardrop. So if you have a picture of a teardrop, you just cut that in half, and that's kind of what your vane looks like. So my arrows have 3 vanes on them. Some people put 4. You can customize them any way you see fit if you fletch your own. So when you fletch it, that's when you glue the vanes onto the arrow. Some of them have an offset, like some of them have a 2 inch offset or whatnot, and they make the arrow spin a little bit better, kind of like similar to when a bullet leaves the barrel, how your rifling in the barrel makes the bullet spin. These vanes do the same thing with the arrow. They make the arrow kind of spin as well.
Okay.
So the more of an offset you have, the more of a spin you're going to get, and it's going to lead to a better accuracy.
So is it more popular so people can buy arrows that are already made, but how like would it be fair to say, and now I'm guessing, I don't know that, but is it like, I would imagine that the more experienced, more hardcore bow hunters, they building their own arrows, and then how like, so is it like no serious hunter ever buy ready-made arrows? Is it this how it works? You really need to buy all those pieces and try it out and figure this out, or is it like for convenience, you can just go in and buy an arrow that that these arrows, they have all the things together, and I know how to shoot them. They shoot good for my bow.
Yeah, so I mean, you don't have to do your own arrows by any means. I don't do my own. I would like to, but I just haven't got around to getting the equipment to do it, or do I have the time to do it? Probably not.
So it's a little bit like with self-loading for a rifle, where you can do your own loads and so on, but you actually buy the pack of.
Exactly. And yeah, I'd love to do that as well. Load my own ammo and kind of play around with it, but again, time becomes a factor.
Gotcha. So this is what I wanted to know, that this is not like a common thing that everybody just makes their own arrows. So would it be fair to like say most people just go and buy arrows that they know they work for them?
So your average bow hunter probably will go and buy their arrows from a shop, or have the shop do them for them, the fletching and everything. There are some diehard bow hunters that will fletch their own and that do fletch their own, and they do very well, and they have very precise arrows and groups out of those. Individuals that do competition shooting along with bow hunting probably will fletch and make their own arrows. So, to have that more very precise tuning of that arrow and make it exactly the way they want it. As long as I'm shooting probably a 1 inch to 2 inch group of 3 arrows, I'm pretty happy with that. If I'm getting, a 1 to 2 inch group out of about 60 yards, I'm pretty happy with that. So that means, the kill zone is about the size of a plate. So if I can get it down to, I want to say golf ball size.
Wow.
If I can put it in the golf ball size, which I think is about 1 inch across, or maybe 2 inches across. But if I can get it in that zone, I'm golden. I'm good to go. So I can do that with arrows that I just run down to the local hunting store and get. There are companies online that will customize your arrows. I use Black Orvis for my arrow purchase this time around. They fletched them, they put the offset, they wrapped it. So they did whatever I wanted to it, and then cut them to length and sent them to me. As long as you know your length, you can do that.
Okay, gotcha. Listen, so just to finish off the whole thing about gear, one last thing that I think is very important to the next subject I want to talk to you about is the sights. How does the sights work? And because you actually have a sights on the bow, and that which that gives you this reasonable, or even more than reasonable, accuracy that you just talked about, that you can be reasonably sure where your arrow goes.
Yeah, for sure. So the sights, there's a couple different sights on there. You've got the set pin sights, which you have you can do 3 pins, 4 pins, or 5 pins. With the set pin sights, you can have vertically or horizontally. If I'm doing set pin, I like the horizontal because there's less stuff in the way to distract my eye. I tend to kind of have a wandering eye, so I like to have little stuff as possible. The sight that I use is a single pin. It's just one little pin. And it's got a dial on the side to where I can adjust my yardage. So it goes from 20 yards to 100 yards. So practically I just have to be able to adjust it to wherever I need it to be when the animal's coming in. So most of the places that I hunt, I've got a range of 15 yards out to about 40 yards. Excuse me, sorry. So I know my 25-yard pin will be good at 20 yards, and it'd also be good at 30 yards. I just need to hold just a smidgen lower. Like if I'm shooting for right behind the shoulder, I may hold at, if I have my 25-yard pin set and he's at 20 yards, I may hold the pin down kind of where the white of the leg comes up. And then if I'm shooting 30, I'm going to hold it just a little bit higher on kind of where the shoulder joins, to where it's going to compensate for that little bit of a difference. But, with that, the single pin for me makes it so much easier because I just got one thing I have to focus on instead of a bunch of different ones and trying to figure it out.
And you probably also see more through the actual sight because you don't, like you said, you don't have them in the way.
Exactly. And they're I'm trying to think of the name of the fibers. They've got the fibers that gather light, and it's not coming to me the name of it, but I want to say holographic, but I know that's not right. But the fibers within the sight, the sun will collect in those and kind of brighten that dot up a little bit.
So gotcha. It's like a light conductive kind of like a light conductors or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and forgive me because I can't think of the name of them right now.
I know what you mean. It's the same thing. The name just
yeah, it's gone. But yeah, those are really good in low light situations, and kind of the way that I gauge if I'm able to still hunt or not, or if I should get down, is when I can't see my pin. Like if I can't see anything through there and I can't make out the silhouette, I'm not going to shoot anything. It's time for me to get down. But kind of real quick on the other gear for the bow, I didn't mention the rest. You have to have a rest that you put your arrow on If anyone looks to get into bow hunting, I recommend the drop away rest, because what it is two forks that you put your arrow in between. And once you release that arrow, those forks drop and your arrow has full clearance.
Gotcha.
So, and then of course you have your stabilizer, which you put on the front, which will stabilize the bow a little bit. Most bows are pretty stable even without that, but it gives you a little bit extra stability. And then you've got your release. You've got a wrist release, the one that you strap around your wrist, and it's got a little trigger like a gun. Or you have your thumb release, which is just a handheld, really small thing. And then when you pull it back, you use the pressure from the like you pull it back when you're getting ready to release. You pull it back and let the pressure from your thumb release that. So that increases accuracy because it avoids target panic. Because each time you release it, it's always a surprise.
Gotcha. Okay. So I think we have a pretty comprehensive picture that this is really like well thought out and well developed gear. So now I want to get into the subject that we often hear discussed, and I'm pretty sure that this is the same in the US being discussed. How humane is bow hunting? And this is like at least I've got myself into a couple of arguments recently, whether it's less humane because there is a higher wound rate, there's more animals that may get wounded, there's more difficult, there's a higher chance of screwing up shots and doing something else, therefore is less humane, or even some people think it's fundamentally inhumane. Then there is the other group that says like, well, look, first of all, those people are, because it's so much more difficult, they're well trained, much better trained than the rifle shooters, because rifle often gets underestimated, that it also requires training and some practice, plus the fact that you can release an arrow and it's quieter, and animal sometimes doesn't even know what hit him. You don't have, there's a lot of discussion around this concussive power, and then the hydrostatic shock that is in the animal, which is in there with the rifle, and it isn't. You don't have hydrostatic shock in the animal when you hit it with a arrow, or maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong on anything that I'm saying. And then some people say, yeah, it's more humane, quicker kill if you do have this shock. And some people would say like, well, actually not at all, because animals don't have this shock, and therefore this is more humane. So what are your views here? Like I'm sure you've been in the 25,000 of these conversations. So I want to hear, your views on this as a practicing bow hunter.
Okay. Yeah. Great question. So, as far as humane kills, you can have humane kills with a bow. You can have humane kills with a rifle. You can have inhumane kills with a bow. You can have inhumane kills with a rifle. When it comes down to it, it really depends on the hunter. It depends on the person behind the equipment. If you're going to take a bad shot, whether it's a rifle or a bow, you're going to have a wounded animal. With kind of going to what you said about practicing and being more equipped and ready for bow hunters, I think that is probably true with a lot of them. Because with a bow, I can practice in my backyard. I don't have to drive anywhere. I've got a 20 to 30 yard range in my backyard where I can shoot anytime I want, any time of the day. So the opportunity to actually practice is more there. As far as like, okay, let me put it this way. So let's say you are out in the field, you have a rifle hunter and a bow hunter. The bow hunter makes a bad shot. He shoots the deer high and like low in the leg. The bow passes through and the deer's limping off. If you have a rifle hunter that's using lead bullet, does the same thing, shoots that deer in the same spot, blows the leg off, runs lead through the leg, that deer is going to more than likely die. For one, he's got more shock and damage to the leg because it got hit and blew all the bones off. and spread lead all the way through the bloodstream. So he's going to end up either having gangrene infection or some sort of infection along those lines from the no leg. He's probably going to get lead poisoning too. The one with the bow kill, if it's a clean shot through, that thing's going to heal up. He may have a little bit of pus and whatnot, but he's going to be able to live another day.
Hmm.
So as far as humane, again, it depends on shot placement. It depends on the hunter. If you have someone that's never shot a rifle, goes out and shoots a deer, makes a bad shot, that's not humane.
Yeah.
And the deer's not going to die a quick death either. If you shoot him in the hindquarters with a bullet, it's going to have a lot of hemorrhaging. It's going to put him into shock. He's going to end up probably being eaten alive by coyotes because he's not going to be able to move too much. With a bow, you're going to have some pain. You're going to, it's going to cut him up, but it's a cleaner cut. It's going to be able to be healed quicker. And I've seen bad shots with both. But the ones with the bow and arrow, if it's a bad shot, generally that animal will recover depending on where you hit them.
Mm-hmm.
If you hit them far back, it's best just to let them sit. Like if you hit them through the guts or whatnot with a bow, it's best to let them sit for a little while and then go get the dog and try to track it down. It'll probably die down somewhere, go bed and lay down and die. If you shoot them with a rifle in a bad spot like that, same thing. Let them sit.
No, that's a good point. That actually, even if you take a bad shot and you wound the animal, the probability of animal recovering from the bow shot it's much higher because it doesn't have this concussive force, because it doesn't destroy absolutely everything on its way, and then when it comes to actual shot, you already said that earlier on. Like you cutting fairly significant wound with the arrow, so the bleeding is I think is as catastrophic as it is in case of rifle.
Yeah,
would that be correct?
So if you're not going to get the shock effect like from the blast of the rifle, but you definitely do a lot of damage with these heads. Just for a couple examples, the farthest shot that I've ever made with my bow was over 100 yards with the bow.
Wow.
It was one of those to where I was chasing this deer for 3 days and he skunked me every stinking time. And I estimated him coming over the ridge at one point, which was 73 yards, and he came over the ridge at another point, which was 100 yards from where I was. And I was like, you know what? And this is not something I practice on a regular basis. This is something I did one time. But I dialed my dial all the way to 100 yards, and I pulled back and I let it go. And I shot right below the deer, like clean miss right below like right next to his feet.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to get another arrow, readjust it, compensate for how far I was off. I let it go. I clocked him here in the front shoulder. It came out the other end, heart, lung, and he went right over the other edge and dropped. So even at that range, if you get him in the right shot, or hit them in the right spot, they're not going to go more than 20 yards and expire. I had one last year at 12 yards, which that's a better bow shot, not at 100 yards, but 12 yards. He came in, I drew back, let the arrow go, and he flinched but didn't move. He started looking around like he was, nothing happened. I thought I missed it. I was like, there's no way I missed him at 12 yards. And I started second guessing my equipment, second guessing myself. And then he started walking off, and I was like, I missed it. What the heck happened? And then I looked over and he started teetering, and then he just fell over. So there was no stress to that animal whatsoever. It hit him. He didn't even know he was hit. So, he may have just felt a little pinch. Who knows what animals feel?
Yeah.
But it didn't phase him one bit until he actually expired, which, I hear that over and over again with extremely sharp broadheads. As long as your equipment's tuned up and sharp, those animals don't suffer hardly at all if you hit them in the right spot.
It's fantastic that you said that, because this is again also a story that I heard more than once, that the animal doesn't even know. It just stands there, comes back to grazing, or just keep chasing does, or just looks around and then expires. That's something that will never happen with a rifle. The animal is not gonna miss being hit by a rifle.
Yeah, yeah.
But but overall, would you agree with the view that the wounding rates will be higher with the bow, or is it not really what you see in practice?
I'm gonna have to say I do agree with that the wound rate is higher with the bow. But the one thing is that I don't know if people realize is what I mentioned earlier, is that even if you wound that animal with the bow, the likelihood of it actually surviving that shot and living another year is a lot better than if you get a wound with a rifle. Just because of the lead factor with a lot of bullets that are being used. I mean, you're going to end up having lead poisoning, and then if you can't find that animal after it's been shot with a bullet, and that lead is in that animal, and the scavengers start eating on it, you're sickening the vultures, the coyotes, or whatever predatory animals you have out there, crows and hawks and stuff like that. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both, but just because archery is a lot more challenging and there's a lot of things that can deflect that arrow, even a twig, like a real small twig, smaller than a pencil, can throw that arrow off if you can't see it. And I've been there, done that. I've missed my fair share of animals due to hitting things that I didn't see.
Yeah.
So yeah, the wound rate I would say would be a little bit higher with archery, just because it is what it is.
And one thing that I also we probably should have touched on this when we talk about the equipment. These arrows, you can use them again. They're not like single use, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the other thing, is that once you pull the trigger on a gun, boom, that bullet's done. I mean, you can reload it, you got the casing, but once you've hit the release on your arrow, you go and pull that arrow out of the target, you get it again. Or you shoot an animal with that arrow, as long as you can find it, you can use it again, as long as it's not broke. You need to check it, make sure that there's no cracks or splinters, because arrows have known to blow up in the bow. Like once you release, if there's a crack or splinter in it, they can, because the force from that string is so much, if there's any kind of issue with the arrow, or splinter or crack or anything like that, that friction is going to just destroy that arrow. And there's been people that have run arrows through their hands because of that. I had one blow up on me one time, and part of the arrow went this way. I got like little splinters of carbon in my hand. Luckily, I didn't get any in my eye. I mean, some people get them in their face, and you have to check your equipment because it can be crippling in some instances if you don't take the time to check your arrows.
Yeah.
But yes, you can use them over again.
Yeah, and I guess there's also that when you shoot an animal, and you shoot an animal, the animal runs away. When you shoot it with gun, then you're basically guessing. I think it felt good. I don't think I missed him, right? And then you're looking for a blood and so on. With a bow, when you can find an arrow, and you can see the pass, you can see the blood on the arrow, and then you basically know, right? That's probably a factor as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the nice thing about the arrows, is that once you retrieve that arrow, if you can find it, the type of blood that's on that arrow, you can pretty much tell where you hit that animal. Dark red means probably liver-ish area. If there's hardly any blood and it's kind of puke green on it, that means you got them in the gut. You're going to want to back out and leave them be for a little while. Bright red, that would be lung, especially if it's bright red with bubbles on it. So it'll tell you more. That arrow will tell you more than what a rifle or bullet will tell you.
So overall, for you, obviously, you prefer bow hunting over rifle hunting, even with a more difficulty. Like, what's the biggest appeal for you? Is it a difficulty, or is it like a tackle? Because like I said many times on this podcast that when I started hunting, I wanted to hunt with a bow, because it's just, as an equipment, was way cooler for me. And me coming from the angling background, it's way more like a fishing rod, because you have flexing elements and you have lines and you have all these things. So that was an appeal for me, why I wanted. And I still do want to go bow hunting one day, maybe. But what's the main appeal for you?
So you hit on a little bit. The challenge of it definitely is probably the biggest appeal for me. Um, I enjoy the challenge of it. I like being so close to the animals. And I feel that bow hunting makes me a better outdoorsman and more ethical hunter, because I don't take risky shots with it. There's not an opportunity to take a risky shot. I mean, if you're hunting rifle, and I'm sure we've all done this, it's like, okay, well, that'll make it through that brush there. I think I'm good. Um, so with bows, you have to make sure that you're more in tune with your surroundings. You're more in tune with nature, in a sense, because you're looking at different ways to different shooting lanes when you're out there. Like, I pre-range everything. I make sure that I take my binoculars and look for twigs through places that I think are good shooting lanes, because those things will pop out of nowhere. But I wait for them to be perfectly broadside. If I don't feel confident with the shot, I'm not going to take the shot. The other thing is the quietness of it and the accessibility that I can get to different farms, because it is not as much of a threat to people, at least that they think. It's not a threat to them as far as like ricochets or long distance. So you have more opportunity as a bow hunter to go different places. So and to be honest with you, I'm probably more confident with my bow than I am with any rifles in my case.
Yeah, obviously this is all, you practice with a bow, and that's your tool of choice. So obviously,
Yeah.
Listen, man, thanks a lot for that. That's I think you made a lot of good arguments, and I know that the European Organization of Hunting, their kind of statement or position on bow hunting is that they're if local organizations want to do it and local governments want to do it, they support it. And this is all down to really local hunting organizations and local governments to enable that. So definitely, for anyone who thinks about it, this podcast will give a lot of food for thoughts and a lot of good arguments that you made about safety of it, and potential recovery rates. And I personally, just for the record, I do think that I don't know if it's more humane, but I don't think it's less humane, and definitely I don't think it's fundamentally unhumane. I don't think that this statement has any reflection in reality. It is as humane as, and like you said, it all depends on the person who uses the gear, and you can take equally reckless shots with a rifle with the added risk of actually shooting someone or damaging property, while with a bow it's a little bit less likely this thing to happen. So thank you for that. Listen, Paul. Tell us like where people can find you and how people can get in touch. I mentioned the very top of the show the Instagram, and then mentioned the Sizzling Arrow Outdoors. But now just give us all the media and stuff, how people can find you.
Yeah, definitely. So I can be found at as Tommy said, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all at Sizzlin Arrow. And you can connect with me through my website, www.sizzlinarrow.com. My email is paul@sizzlinarrow.com. and that can be found on the website as well. But yeah, pretty much anything you want to know about Sizzlin Arrow, or if you want to connect with me, you can do that through our website. So, that's pretty much where I'm at. And, we have the podcast too, as Tommy mentioned. We're doing 2 episodes a month, interview show at the end of the month. And then we try to get one just for thought episode where I just kind of talk about random topics around hunting, cooking, or farming, and cover that probably towards the middle of each month. So
right, yeah. I didn't know that you're on Twitter. I was looking. I give you a follow.
Very rarely.
Okay.
Yeah,
but I think I didn't even find the profile. I don't know. I'll check it again. I'll give you a follow.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. I'm not very active on Twitter at all.
Yeah,
so
yeah. It's not for everybody.
Mainly Instagram.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it, man. Yeah, but on the Instagram, people can even could follow your Michigan hunt. Where it was great. Listen, Paul, thanks again. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, not a problem, Tommy. Thanks for having me, buddy.